Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Federal Programs Lunch and Learn. On behalf of the Oklahoma State Department of Education, we welcome you and we thank you for joining us. Today, we are just going to chat a little bit about the closeout of those CARES funds. The performance period for those funds ended September 30th, and then we have been amidst the liquidation period. But at this point, those funds should be spent and liquidated. Your claims should have been processed already, and so we're going to talk about closing out that program. But before we jump into that, I just want to go ahead and add a few things to your calendar. I don't want any of these deadlines to kind of sneak up on us, so it's best to start talking about them now, and then we just won't stop talking about them until they happen. But if you would please add these important dates to your calendar. June 30th is the last day for fiscal year 23 application changes. So this is the last date that you can change your budget in any application. June 30th. June 30th is also the day, the last day to encumber any fiscal year 23 funds. So if you are going to put a PO in place that you plan to spend fiscal year 23 funds, the day of the PO, the last day for that PO has to be June 30th. August 1st is the last day to file a fiscal year 23 claim. All claims submitted after this date are subject to the approval of the State Board of Education. And we are going to try to not take any late claims to the board this year. So we really need to be making sure that all those claims are filed before this date. If you're still waiting for things to arrive over the summer, we're going to encourage you to close out 23 and move things into fiscal year 24 if that's an option. So that August 1st deadline is the last day to file a fiscal year 23 claim.
Michelle, can I add that last claim date can go through July 31st if you're paying bills in July after your July board meeting for services that were rendered in June of FY23 or before. So you can run that claim, but make sure in your accounting system you are in the correct year when you run that claim.
Absolutely. So again, for those expenses that you obligate appropriately in fiscal year 23 and they just haven't arrived or been paid yet, you can claim those through July 31st. It just has to be submitted on August 1st. And that claim can run through that date. But again, if you are in any way, shape, or form worried about those things getting in on time, we're going to encourage you to move things to fiscal year 24 if there's any chance that you won't get that claim in by August 1st. Okay, September 1st is fiscal year 23 closeouts are due. This is still going to be our due date regardless of what we chat about today, but we're just encouraging you to close out those CARES applications earlier than that, but September 1st is going to be our true deadline. And then September 30th, we want to go ahead and add that to your calendar. It's the last day to encumber second year carryover. And so this year, that means those SR2 and SR2 state set aside 793 and 794. Those will be that's the last day that you can put a PO in place to draw down those funds. We got a personal message, but it's a good reminder for everyone. These are all recorded. We're working on finding exactly the right place to put them on the website, but the PowerPoints will also be available. And I just shared today's PowerPoint in the chat. And so you can download those and make sure you have all those dates written in your calendar. And now we are going to jump right into our content for today. We hope everyone is safe and warm and maybe even with a cup of hot cocoa in front of a fire watching the pretty snow. Hopefully it's still pretty everywhere, not dangerous, but we're just going to walk through this closeout process and what you need to do with those CARES and Gear CARES funds. So CARES closeout, this includes CARES 788 and Gear CARES 721. As the performance period, like we already discussed for CARES and Gear CARES have expired and the timeline for liquidation has come to an end, we just want you to close out these grants at your earliest convenience. We know that running a lot of closeouts at the same time can be confusing. So these closeouts are open. These are the only closeouts that are open right now. And we just would like you to close them out at your earliest convenience. This process may require different action based on your district circumstances. So we're going to go through a few steps that you would work through if you're trying to close these grants out. So the first step in closing out those CARES grants, and again, we're talking about CARES and Gear Care 788 and 721, is you're going to delete any remaining unsubmitted claims. Now, I don't think that there are very many of these out there. Most of the claims that you guys created got submitted and got approved. But if for some reason there is a claim that's just sitting out there that hasn't been submitted, the liquidation period has expired, has ended, and so we need you to delete those unsubmitted claims. Step 2 in this process, go ahead.
If they have unsubmitted claims and they have to delete that, make sure they go back and recode accordingly and take it out of that federal program.
Absolutely. I don't think that there are any claims in there for date ranges. They were just kind of hanging out there. But if for some reason you have started a claim and you just never got it submitted in time, if you had expenses for a date range, you would need to recode those into general fund because the liquidation period for CARES has passed. Okay, so the next step, step 2, is if you had a CARES or a Gear CARES application that you created, but you never submitted any claims, or maybe you opened it up and it did not have any funds or it had very little funds and so you chose not to spend those. If you're not claiming anything, we ask that you go ahead and delete that application. Deleting the application will prevent the need for a closeout. And so then you don't have to work through the rest of the process. So if you didn't claim anything in your fiscal year 23 CARES or Gear Care funds, you can delete that application and there would be no need to do a closeout. The next step is the actual closeout. So those of you that claimed CARES 788 or Gear Care 721 funds in fiscal year 23, you're just going to follow our normal closeout process. Remember that changed last year, so it is a little bit different. But if you claimed any funds in fiscal year 23, we're going to want you to complete the closeout process, and we're going to walk through that process right now. So this is exactly the same closeout process that we had in the summer of last year. And just as a reminder, when an LEA has completely finished expending funds and received reimbursement for those current year expenditures, you have to complete a closeout process in GMS. The process must be completed for every grant program that you receive funds under, but only CARES and Gear CARES are open at this time because that liquidation has ended, okay? So this process is the same process you normally follow. It's just only open for CARES and Gear CARES, that's 788 and 721. We're just going to walk through that process, a process most of you are very familiar with, but just as a reminder, you're going to log in to single sign-on, and then you are going to select the grants management and expenditure reporting system. You want to make sure you select fiscal year 2023. So this is a great example because it says fiscal year 22. It should default for fiscal year 23, but if you've been clicking back and forth and looking at several years, you're going to want to make sure you have selected the correct fiscal year. Then you're going to select payments tab for the application that you're closing out. So again, we're closing out fiscal year 20 CARES and also Gear CARES. And so you're just going to select the payments button for that grant. At the top of that page, you're going to click the view summary expenditure and closeout report, but a good place to check, and everyone should be current. Like I said, I think all of those CARES claims are paid, but you want to make sure this auto scheduled number is 0. That means everything has been processed. It's been cleared through your bank. You are ready to close out. So this is just one of those things that you can just double check to ensure that all those payments have been processed. And ideally, we're looking for a zero balance, but I know that some of you have a few pennies left here and there. Okay, so you're going to check the claim status on all of your claims. And this is kind of what I was discussing before. If you were to have a return for changes or one that was not submitted, you would need to delete that at this time because that liquidation deadline has passed. You want all of the status of all of your claims to say approved. After you have double checked that all of your claims are approved, you're going to scroll to the bottom of the page. When you scroll to the bottom of the page, you're going to click to create that closeout report. So again, we're going to check to make sure all of our claims or our summary expenditure reports have been approved. Scroll to the bottom of the page and click create closeout report. If you'll remember, we added a step last year, and that is with your closeout, we require that you run a year-end summary expenditure report. What that is a summary expenditure report beginning 7/1/2022. That was the first day of the fiscal year through your final claim for CARES and Gear CARES. We would ask that you run that to 1/31 because that's the end of the month. Your year-end summary expenditure report is going to match your OSDE payments. It's going to match your expenditure amount by function and object code. And really what this is a final check to ensure that what you intended to code and claim in each program match what was actually claimed and reimbursed. And we're going to look at where you'll compare that information to. So you're going to run that report in your financial accounting system, and then you are going to compare that information to what's in GMS.
Hey, Michelle,
yeah.
I'm gonna stop you for a second. Can you go back to that previous page?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason why we want the 1/31/2023, most of you filed your claim between 7/1 and 9/30, which 9/30 was the liquidation or the day the funds were no longer available to encumber, but we may have paid bills in September. But the reason why we want this 1/31 date on your final expenditure report that you upload is if an encumbrance clerk went in and coded something by mistake in November or December or January to project 788 or 721, it will show up on this report. And then the next page that Michelle's fixing to go over will not match. Your payments will not match the report you ran because a mistake was made in coding at a later date, and we have to go back and recode that, run that report again so it all matches. So that's why we want this report ran from 7/1 to 1/31, just to make sure the district doesn't get in trouble with OCAS at the end of the year, that their expenses and their revenue doesn't match.
Yes, absolutely. So again, what Rick is talking about when you run this report, where you're going to check that information is against the expenditure and payment page, the verification. So OSDE payments and expenditure amounts are divided by function and object code. And what is on that summary expenditure report should match exactly to what's in GMS in the OSDE payments and the expenditure amounts. So on this page, it will allow you to modify those expenditure amounts, but we do not want you to do that. What we want you to do is ensure that what is in your computer system matches what is already in GMS. And most important of all, those bottom numbers match exactly to what is on your claim. I'm going to click over here on this next page. Ensure again that the payments, the expenditure amounts, and that year-end summary report match all the way across. If you claimed IDC, you're going to want to look at this top number because that IDC is not going to come out on that summary expenditure report. And so this is the amount that will match, and you will have to probably tell OCAS about that indirect cost that you claimed. But these subtotals is what will match your year-end summary report. And just like Rick was talking about, if something does not match, then we need to fix the problem. So what if your summary expenditure report does not match? What you're going to do is kind of just work through where the error may have happened. So you can return to the payment summary screen and you can view all of your filed claims. You can rerun the claims for each of those date ranges. If there's a date range in that final claim that you hadn't claimed already, you could run a report for that date range, and anything that has not been claimed as of this date needs to be removed and recoded. So the liquidation period has surpassed for CARES. And so if you do this and realize that you had some things coded to CARES that you didn't claim or couldn't claim, at this point in time, we would need to recode those to another fund. So you want to investigate any of those inaccuracies, you want to identify the differences and fix those differences so that everything aligns. On that closeout report, you're then going to be asked to enter or select the expenditure period end date. This will pre-populate for you. You just have to select it. On the final expenditure report, there's a box that will automatically be checked so that you know this is it. You're closing out the program. And then last but certainly not least, you're going to save the page and submit to USDE. As always, if you need help with this process, please do not hesitate to reach out. Your first contact for help with this closeout is going to be your reviewer. They are always your first best resource when you have an issue with GMS or an issue with a claim or application. They are your first best resource. But then you can also always reach out to Rick or Matt or myself, and we'll be happy to assist you. So that is the end of our presentation about closeouts today. So I will open it up for questions if anyone has something that they didn't understand or they want me to review, or if you just have a question in general, we'll be happy to answer those questions at this time. Off-topic question, when will reallocations be available in GMS? Matt is working on those right now. We're hoping those go in very soon, maybe even within the next week. So they're coming. Again, we just remind you that this is our first reallocation season. And so we're learning that process, but it should be very, very quickly.
On a similar note, we just started getting in preliminary allocation amounts for next year, which is about a month and a half sooner than we got them last year. So as soon as we get done with the reallocations, we'll try to get those preliminary numbers out to you so you guys can start planning.
And hopefully everything will happen a little bit quicker this year than it did in the past. The learning curve, not quite as steep after a year under the belt. So we appreciate your patience. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will give you back a few more minutes in your day. I knew today would kind of be quick, but hopefully that means you can sit and watch a little bit more of this pretty snow. And if you are working from home today or virtually working, you can soak up some of that time that we have left. So we appreciate you joining us. As always, please reach out if you need any assistance, and we will look forward to seeing you again next week. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.